handout that I gave you today actually has about 12 pages, I think. And I've just tried because of the difficulties, or they're not the limitations. Zoom is just different in terms of being able to keep you in the loop while I'm doing my notes. So if that's okay, can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Woo-hoo! Hey, we're good. And there'll be just one brief sheet at the end that I haven't given you. It's the share sheet. And I'll make sure you all get it so that you could send it back if you had something you wanted to share, or you can just share with me at email, and I'll get those recommendations on good lessons and things that you found out at Roots Tech, because they were great. Okay, we got two more people coming in. It says Erlene and Diane Robinson. So we've got two more, and that's good because we're just getting started.
Where is it?
Okay, so this is kind of a continuation of last week on sourcing your documents with Elizabeth Schoen Mills, because she shows you more than documents. She's more than just a way to put things into a certain format. I hope that over the last several weeks, I've emphasized enough that she really teaches you how to work with documents and how to determine whether they are genuine, whether they're yes but type of documents, meaning they need to be explained. So her book, Evidence Explained, is it's really a wonderful, wonderful book. However, if you're thinking of getting that book, which right now is in its third edition, I would ask the publisher if they have the fourth edition or how soon it's coming, because it looks like she's got another one coming. But I would highly recommend it, or at least that you recommend it for your local library so that you can go consult it whenever you want to. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Here comes Rita back in. Okay, there we are. Her materials, if you're just thinking of citation style, they're grounded in what we call the Chicago Manual Humanities style. It's standard for most historians. What's different about Elizabeth Schoen Mills is she's gone so far beyond, and she is utilized by many others today in history departments as a real source, so to speak, to go to in terms of working with the validity of documents, noting how to cite electronic sources and unique other kinds of historic documents. You can just find everything in that 700 and some page book. I would also recommend, as I talked last week again, with joining her site. She's free. Just put in Elizabeth Schoen Mills in quotation marks out at Google, and you're going to come up to her site, evidenceexplained.com. And you're going to love, if you get into her at all and you access her free site, that is, you actually sign in, you're going to have access to some quick lessons that can really help you. And you can cut and paste as needed from her. I think you would really like it. If you're a nerd like me, you may want to go to some of her in-depth stuff, and that's just another step in, and it's still all free. She is a wonder. She just really, really is. But the access to quick lessons, those are really good. If you're not so inclined out online, at the very least, you might want to go out to Amazon or out to her site, but and get some of her quick check models. They average about a little over $7, maybe $8 for 1 to 2 pages of very well vetted lessons. They're laminated. They're easy to pack if you're going someplace. There were 9 out there available yesterday when I just checked them really quickly at Amazon. Tell your spousal units, they make great Christmas presents. But they're really nice to have just on hand to take a quick look and say, aha, I thought I was on the right track. I don't have the big book, but I can check her through this. Uh, that the quick check models are what I would recommend as the very least. And then being able to join her free site will really also help you. But no matter what, in a library someplace, hopefully there's a copy of her book. And usually it looks like she's changing these about every 3 to 4 years. A good friend who has Family Roots Publishing, Leland Meitzler, says that he's tried to persuade her to put it totally online, but checking her out, it looks like this access to her evidenceexplained.com online is her answer to that. I think she'll still continue, just like many of us like, she'll still continue to print that book hardbound. If you're paper-based, use the citation models that she's got. I recognize there are still many people out there who are paper-based, but even if you are on paper, even if you have all those great pictures or you have those maps, or like I have my grandfather Lee's homestead, all of his homestead papers from there out at Crown Ridge Ranch near Havre. She's worth looking at it just in terms of the things, the ideas she gives you. I know personally that I made sure with my grandpa's document, full document, that I made a careful title page for it. I carefully annotated things, doggone it, on the back side of each page. That's really good. But you know, Elizabeth Schoen Mills is really right. If you don't cite a particular document in the margin of the certificate in pencil, please, very carefully, using the citation references for how you do a certificate, then the first time somebody utilizes your document and scans it, the backside citation is going to be missed. And she's right. You need to plan for the people who will use your good work after you're gone. So I highly advise that where you're working with documents you intend to keep, such as pictures, or with some kind of a handwritten document, maybe it's letters or whatever, that somewhere on that document, preferably on the front, although you may have to make the decision to put it on the back, that's second best, that you actually place your citation there, utilizing her methodologies. Yeah, I know that takes a long time. The other night I was doing another small set again of things that Carolyn and I got from my brother not long ago. And it took me about 15 or 20 minutes to do some of those things on the right side of the scanned picture, at least the copy of it that I have. And so that at least is done. It didn't take a super long time to do it. And I was proud of myself. I didn't even resort to doing something quick and saying, I'll get back to it later. The other thing I'm going to talk to you about today is a fun piece of ware that is out on the net that you can use. Yes, it has a purchasable kind of thing, but I've never seen the need to use that. I've used instead the Zotero book that goes with it. Zotero is a means for you to format your material. If you're looking at something, you're saying, ugh, this is so tough to do. I just don't want to think about my high school senior class or my college senior class or whatever class in research in terms of formatting this stuff. It was really not a fun time for me. Well, today that's been cut to nothing. You can paste your citation when you use Zotero or z-bib.org. You'll see it here at the end of 5, my number 5. You can have them make the citation for you and then cut and paste it right back to your piece or whatever that you're using. Sometimes I want to just see how many ways an item could look, because I'm a nerd and I've taught research where APA was recommended rather than Chicago style or whatever. College kids know about this. High school kids many of them by their senior year know about this. The fastest thing for you to use is zbib.org. I like it when I've got a book. I'm not sure when I look at the site that's got it out at WorldCat or whatever, which one I'm really looking at, and I'll use the ISBN number. And guess what? When I use that, I just have to throw in the ISBN number and it will create that particular thing for me. A quick review of last week again. Her quick check models are there to really help you with historical records. You might get a historical record. I mean, I've got one from my oldest brother, and he's gone now. And he said that he was born and raised in the Swan Valley. Well, that's a historical record from my brother Conley, but his assertion happened not to be true, at least for part of that. Yes, he was raised in the Swan Valley, but he was born in Havre, Montana. What do I do with something like that? Well, I annotate it with a note at the bottom that says, you know, although I'm looking at my brother's, it was actually an application for a job. And looking at that, I have a copy of that just in the interests of capturing his life. And I could note, no, that's not right. He kind of shortcutted on things there and said he was born and raised there. Yes, he came by the time he was about 4 years old. He came to the Swan Valley, but not until then. And so I have to, when I do that, I'm approaching this second thing, the record's credibility. When the information conflicts with something else, I have to do that. And I also have to, in my note, identify who I am and how I may, how and why I'm making that assertion. And I do that for my family because I have to recognize that even if my brothers and sisters were raised in Ferndale at the same time I was, that their kids who are now in their 50s or their 60s, they weren't raised there. They don't have the same kind of filter that we might use when we're looking at what we think of Ferndale, or how we all judged it a little differently and had different memories of it. And so I need to say, well, you know, that information is there for me. And I suppose if I ever ran it past my other brother, Mike, he'd say, yeah, that's not true. Then we could add Mike's name there. But Elizabeth Schoen Mills and her evidence explained guides you through those kinds of things. And you're not going to find them in other citation manuals. You're not going to find them with many other kinds of people. The only way you would find that otherwise would be getting into a really, really good class on documentation, maybe Thomas Jones or something like that. And chances are quite likely that when he does that class, he's going to be quoting, I can tell you, Evidence Explained by Elizabeth Schoen Mills. So there's thousands of examples from her, which it's really great. And on this second page that I'm bringing up again now from your notes, these are just the contents again, understanding all the different kinds of record types when you see them. One is not the same as the next. For example, is it a record in and of itself if you find a letter, unique letter from a county board of commissioners signed by them and sending a child to the state orphanage, even though it was a unique kind of record? I can tell you, yes, it is. And I could find the reference then in their minutes. I could find that particular thing for a person to say, yes, this is an official record. This is, unless you've got an intake paper from Twin Bridges, which was our state orphanage home for that time, I could tell that person, unless you've got an official intake, this serves as that particular function. This is how you got to that particular place. Understanding the impact of the records. By the way, that was the first known record for that child, even though he happened to be over the age of 11. We could never find a birth certificate. the degree of reliability placed on a record versus something else of a similar type. If I would have had an intake paper or some kind of a birth record of type for that particular person, that would have been something that I could have judged one against the other. But she goes through all of these types of things and tells you why you have to prepare yourself carefully, why one record might be better than another, or there simply might not be enough documents. You know, I have people who ask me, how many documents do I have to get? And I will ask them right back, what are you attempting to achieve? Are you attempting to look at that person's life from one person's point of view? Are you attempting to get or look at everything you can for a particular period of time if you're trying to document, for instance, a birth? It depends on what you want. That's why you need to write that goal. And you may need to extend your goal as you find other documents that conflict with one another. I mean, she'll talk to you about those published versus those unpublished sources, which is the chat that I had with the gentleman about the unique record source we found for his being sent to Twin Bridges. That was a very unique unpublished, what we call unpublished material, although we could find it in the documents. We could find it referred to in the documents for the particular county from which he was sent. There was just a summary of it, but he happened to have a copy of that particular thing. It's the only thing he had recording who he was. The differences in citing different forms of the same record. So you've got an original of a birth certificate. How different is that from a digital image again? And why those differences might matter, say when you're attempting to get something like a record for your life. That, let's just talk about what is the smart ID that we've got today. There would be a big difference between an original versus a microfilm versus a digital. You'd want to have something that recorded that it was originally from the county and it was signed off by that county. And so looking at her materials will prepare you not only for the United States, but it will also prepare you for many kinds of international records. So there I am. I'm done with the ad again, but I want to just show you some things. Looking at this state level record for vital records, here are the certificate elements that you're going to want to look at if you've got a certificate and you're going to record that information carefully in pencil on the margin of that particular document before you put it into a plastic cover of type and pass it on to someone else. So she shows you how you can source that. She actually has 3 levels, and I'm only showing you 2 today. The source list entry, meaning this is what you're going to put in, so that if you're putting it, if you're going to finally have a document source, it would not be, it would be the print here under jurisdiction saying, okay, this one came from Delaware, period. The agency or the creator is the Department of Health and Social Services, period. The series, it's a birth certificate. The repository where it's available for anyone else to go to, the Office of Vital Statistics in Dover, Delaware. The only way in which I would curate or change this is usually in my documents, I will either put the person at the beginning if I am looking at a source list about a particular person in my family, like Lee, Oscar, period, you know, and then Delaware and so on. Or I can put it at the end. I can place it at the end, and that's okay too. And all she's showing you is the first full reference note when you begin to publish those things or put them out for others to see. Why is this an interesting thing for you to do? Well, that's the same way, that particular record I just showed you, if you take a look at it in, for example, something like ancestry.com, and you see those citations at the end that you can copy, cut, and paste, you need to choose the one that fits this particular model. That means that it's going to be the original source, not the ancestry source. That could go in the notes with this that indicates where you got it on a certain date. When I use ancestry, I'm going to be very, very careful that I do this kind of model, this source list entry, because it's going to let me cut paste it if I want to there. It looks pretty good. Sometimes you have to change just a little bit, but then I am going to say that I retrieved it at ancestry.com on such and such date. That date really helps me because it tells me when I was in there looking at those particular files and what I happened to do. And they like that too. So you can cut and paste their references if you want to, which makes things easy. And so you can cut and paste then the rest of the things in, and voila, it's there. Her book will show you interesting things. I just picked a couple of things to show you today. A church issued certificate. Say that you've got someone and they came from Norway before they ever came to the United States, as did my grandfather Beck, Engvald, Inky Binky Beck. He had a church issued certificate for his birth. I was also able to find him in the Norwegian records, so I could have it two ways, as it were, and see what was there. But we do in our family, I believe one of my cousins has his church issued certificate for his birth. And the only thing again, then that is here that I would ever add in is the person's name, Engvald Bernard Beck. And notice here that the collection owner, whoever would have it, privately held by, I imagine today that would be Ronald Roy Higgins.
Mm.
But it gives you that opportunity to look at it. Or if you found just the fact that he was born and he was christened on a certain date in Leksvig, Norway, which I have in my records, then it would look slightly different again, but his name would still be there. The name of his parents would be there, and you would get the additional listing of all of the witnesses for the actual christening. The advantage in those, in that kind of a church record, in the records for Norway, the records for Sweden, Denmark, many countries, also the records for the Lutheran Evangelical Church in the United States, is that there would be more there. There would be witnesses there and so on. And so that's kind of nice. It's nice to have the certificate, but boy, when you can get extra information, it's really good. Elizabeth Schoen Mills will show you how to vary every single one of those in a quick format. So maybe all you've got is the fact that the person was buried out in a rural grave someplace. She'll show you those same kinds of things. Notice that she's got a whole thing here. I'll see if I can make this bigger for you. That she'll make a whole thing here that talks about the location. And that's where you could also put in the GPS reading, which today can really help your people in terms of finding that. It could be a little more helpful if you just didn't record the particular graveyard, but you also record it as close as possible to the grave space if it is known. Go out and take a look at things like Find a Grave. Go out and look at some of the other things that are just like it for other countries, and you'll see that most of them are attempting to add GPS descriptor locators wherever they can. And if you are putting something in and you can add that, that's a very good thing to do. Additionally, the other thing you can do when you say, well, Jan, I don't know what that is, and I don't really have my own GPS locator. Well, out at Find a Grave, you can go right out to Find a Grave and ask for that particular cemetery location description by GPS. And most times it's there. I'd say 95% of the time. So you get oddball things. Let's shift our gears when we're looking at quick check models that she's got, and you have some kind of a unique census. I just wish I would have put in the unique census for the new local tribe. There was a unique census for our new local tribe in Great Falls, Montana, and a unique census was done by a Catholic nun in 1975. We have several copies of that with every name recorded. I've never seen it recorded with a source list entry, but here would be the way to do it, to be able to put it in the jurisdiction, the census ID, the agency creator, publication date, and so on. It would be a little different. This one happens to be from National Archival Materials. The one for our local group would be a little different because it was done in 1975, and the jurisdiction would have to be just, it would have to be Cascade County, Montana. They did not have their own reservation then. They did not have their own place. It was a unique kind of census created, but by golly, her formatting would show you how to do this and how to get it in shape right away. What we would have to watch with that one, by the way, is that the new name of the reservation and the new placement had not been picked up and put in the jurisdiction label, because that would be a mislabel. This would have happened in 1975, and they did not get an official tribal designation until 2 years ago. So we need to watch that for correct format. You can look at things like microfilm population schedules, and it will cite those for you. In fact, when you go out and you look at MyHeritage, which you have to do a little trick with it in order to get its models up, but it does this same format. Ancestry does this same format pretty much. Let me tell you that Family Search sometimes does this format, many times does its own format, but they're arranged just a little differently, and they're unique and they are okay. They still fit another part of the model. When people say, well, which one is the correct one? They're all using, all of these companies pretty well have acceded to the idea of the Chicago model. And so they'll all fit, even if they look a little different. With regard to archived materials in digital archives, so maybe you've got lots of documents that you found, and they're not what we would call published. They're not necessarily published, but they are available in a file, or they're transcribed, or they've been put out someplace digitally or whatever. You can look for these kinds of things. Here's another thing that I'm hoping that you'll write in your notes. When you see something from a digital archives and you're looking for how to look at or how to put the source materials down, frequently they will have a preferred source type, and they will show you what that is. You can always go look to that to see what is there, and you'll find again that most of these places are utilizing this particular thing. The one exception is going to be science. When you look at the Library of Congress, science goes over to that APA format. But that's okay again, because that's its proper format for the type of material that it is. So you're going to see these things, the source list entries and so on, to be able to work with things quickly. The reason I say get, if you can, get the books or get whatever, it can really help you. I just wanted to show you a quick search that I did using Elizabeth Schoen Mills in her quick lessons right out at her site. She said, okay, so what do you want a quick lesson on? Well, the first thing that ever happens, one of the first things that we get as librarians in a genealogy library is that thing called family lore and Indian princesses. My family has an Indian princess. How can I find it? How can I document this for sure? We're very sure of it. And so I typed in Indian princesses and just got the first one, only number one, and quickly saw that what she was doing had to do with Indian censuses. So I typed in my query again as Indian censuses, and this time she came up with several different lessons I could go to in her programs, just in her quick lessons, or how do I, help, how do I cite this oddball census? What do I do with this particular thing? And so, by the way, in looking at quick lesson number 7, they had to say, yes, the census enumerators recorded this person, but they did not record them as half Indian, half anything. And the land was not necessarily documented Indian land. And so if you wanted that kind of citation, or you wanted to attempt to approve that fact, that particular Indian census might be helpful to you in terms of just documenting where the people were at a certain time, but it would not necessarily document the item or the way in which you would want it to do. So, you can look at all of her quick lessons, and it took me maybe 15-20 minutes looking at all of these lessons really quickly. None of them were beyond a page and a half, but they all really helped. I'll tell you, the one that was wonderful was number 5 here, quick lesson 17, the evidence analysis process map that I showed you last week with her. They don't provide sufficient evidence, but someone else said, okay, here's the wife of Marataurus was an Indian woman. Her father was an Indian. At least that's something if you can attribute it back again. But you're still going to need, if you can get it, corroborating evidence. So there are many lessons, many things again with speculation and proof sites. She offers us about 8 different things that we can go to here that might help us. What she's saying to us is there's not one definite thing for a particular object like that. And usually people will come in and say, I'm looking for a document that will explain this so that I can settle this particular issue or whatever. And so you have to sit down and explain that it takes a little more to be able to get to that point. The second part that I want to show you today, the second neat little tool, and I wish we could go out online, but when I went out online, I tried this yesterday and went out. I thought I'll just do a part of this online. It's my site here is too unstable. It will not do it. It kicks me out. So Tarot is this wonderful little thing that you can use. I'm giving you, I would just say, first of all, go out and try Zotero Bib for bibliography. It's just zbib.org. I can tell some of you are sneaking off to do that right now. That's okay. But you can learn to format your own material another way. Say that you're still using paper, or you're uncertain of what you're doing, or even sometimes with Roots Magic, if you're using something like that, or using one of the other, family tree or something like that, and you're uncertain of what to do with a particular source, remember, they will follow you through a lot of the same thing. Roots Magic does it for sure. It's what Bruce Busby uses and recommends. And again, it's great because it's just built back on that Chicago style. But Zotero or zbib.org, when you're out someplace and you're saying, ooh, I've seen this, this would be really good, but I'm in a library really quickly. I'm sitting here at their computer. What can I do to actually get a bibliography reference? Because I can never remember how to write them. Well, let me tell you what you can do with ZBib. You can just put in the title at ZBib. You can just put in the ISBN. You can put in the author. You'll have to search through a little more. And then once you're at ZBib, it says, okay, I have a couple of 100 models here. Which one do you want? And Chicago is right near the top, and it will style that for you. And then luckily, even though you're only out there temporarily, ZBib allows you to keep it right on your own computer. It's not on their models someplace or whatever. You can build that and just keep looking. You don't have to have software or anything else. It's an open, what we call an open source research tool. There are people who've said, there are so many ways to source different documents. I mean, if you're an anthropology person, you're going to source things slightly differently again, according to your model. Lots of universities say that they use APA model only, or they use Chicago style only, or whatever. And yet you're going to find out that when they have their reference materials put together, you're going to find that they have some variations, some things that they do with that particular model. And so it's not a pure model. ZBib is going to allow you to go out there and put something in and say, oh, this is what it would look like. Can I cut and paste it over to my documents? Yes, I can. And that means that you've learned something valuable here. And that is, instead of saying, I've got that neat fact, but I'll source it tomorrow, or I'll when I get time, I'll do a bunch of these sources. No, it gives it to you right then, so you can get it done. You can lead yourself right through it. I frequently at Roots Magic, when I'm looking at it, I'll find a source like this, and instead of using the full automated source, I know as a researcher that I can go down to the very last line in that particular format of Bruce Busby's, and I can cut and paste my particular source in that I just got, and voila, it occurs and comes into the system just the way it should. So ZBib is really wonderful, especially when you're on the fly and you're someplace. Say that you're in the place that I just hope I get to go someday, the University of Virginia Archives, and I don't have my computer with me. It's back in my room or whatever. If I'm looking to source something that they have there, I can do that right away just by using one of their computers and using ZBib and getting that particular thing and either sending it to me, to myself as an email, or getting a copy of it and putting it elsewhere. It's ad-free. It's completely free to you. Open source material research tools are wonderful. If you have not gone out and looked at them, you can go out to Google and put in open source research tools in quotation marks, and you're going to bring up lots of these, not just this one. It's just that I've found that this one is really convenient. It's really good for us as genealogists because it's fast. Yes, you can also do something else. So this is what I did yesterday for you. I just looked at number one. I wanted to use an ISBN number just from the back of the book. I wondered, I thought, is it going to tell me I've got Elizabeth Schoen Mill's book here? Is it going to tell me that it's the third edition or whatever? Honest to goodness, folks, all I did up here where you can see the cursor is I put in the particular ISBN number, and then I moved over. I've got a copy here that we can't move. I moved over to Cite. I hit that button, and voila, about 5 seconds later, a bibliography reference came up. The first one that came up was just the first one in the list, the Modern Language Association 8th edition. And it says, here's one. Well, that might have been good enough, but if you notice in the bibliography, it doesn't tell you where that publishing company is, and you need to know where that publishing company was. That's essential for historians, for anthropologists, for whatever. And so I said, so I hit this little inverted arrow and went down and found Chicago manual style and pushed that in again with the same thing, just the ISBN. And guess what? It popped up, and here it was, all ready for me to go. So I could just cut and paste it. Isn't that great?
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Additionally, when I'm thinking, I can hear Jan, I could just tell you that going through a doctoral process, believe me, there's a librarian at every university that looks at every single citation you made in your dissertation or your paper and looks to see that it is cited correctly.
Oh, boy. I remember.
Wow, could this help? So using a title. So I just went out and I said, yeah, well, let's just go out and throw in a title out at Amazon.com and see what happens. So I put in the Time Traveler's Guide to Elizabethan England, which I've talked to you guys about recently in terms of really neat stuff that you can find to do. I'd love to do time travel, but that's not going to work. But neat stuff that you can do to be able to find stuff for your particular notes or your timeline. And I put it in, I pushed the citation button. It came up with the correct thing that I wanted, because of course by then I knew I was asking for Chicago style. That's all I had to do was ask for it. Now, here's what's really fun. You notice this manual entry thing up here? If you've got some kind of a document where you say, boy, you know, this is really unique. This is a document. This is my grandfather's christening paper. I can make my own. If I go up and if I had gone up and I looked at manual entry and hit that, it leads you through creating your own entry and creating it in the correct format. It's the same format that you are going to find done by Bruce Busby. It's the same format that you in Roots Magic. It's the same format that you will find done pretty much in basic script format anyway by Elizabeth Schoen Mills. So it's going to lead you through creating your entry, creating the correct format, and you can cut and paste it if you want to and go off with the idea again of you didn't do it wrong. I'm hoping, of course, as a former research professor, that you would learn to use the correct format within Roots Magic or within Family Tree or any of the other programs that are available out on the market. I would hope that you would also want to use a correct format if you're strictly using or doing your genealogy by paper, again, so that you've got it. But if you cannot remember to create things in the correct format, please do yourself and your future readers a big, big favor. If you've got the same kind of source citation to be able to do a manual entry, as you see here, in something like Roots Magic or over in any of the other programs that are available out online, or not online, but they're available for you to work with your family history, then take time to go through the manual entry. If you can't do that, take time to go to ZBib, create your entry, make a correct format and get it into the correct spot, because you owe your family that. Hopefully, if you're going to pass your documents and your materials on, make sure that they've got something so that they can look back very, very consistently and say, wow, you know, this doesn't just tell me that it was the 1920 census, so I have to go look at it again and see if it's really there. This tells me when and where, so that if I want to, I can put that in and I can find that very, very quickly at any one of 5 free census sites or whatever. I frankly, even though I've got Zotero available to me on my desktop, I use it for some different things in helping to manage my stuff. And very occasionally I'll pull materials into it. It allows you to do all kinds of things and it's free. They're open source and they're beautiful, beautiful sources. If you were going to graduate school today, you would find many universities and especially 2-year colleges that would recommend these open source tools to you. But I find Zotero Bib, the short one, the ZBib, is just fine to be able to check something really quickly or create something and say, you know, I don't have all the information here. I don't see it right away. And I want to get the information and use it correctly. So I just need to do ZBib real quick and get it. If you don't have the means to run off a page at the library, if you're working at a library or whatever, then take the time to handwrite it, but it can really help you. ZBib and Zotero Bib, it goes It does over actually 9,000 styles. Didn't know there were that many, huh? When you begin to work with different bibliographies, even within history, the Chicago style is a good basic style to use. But when you begin to use that, you're going to find that there are places, University of Montana, Montana State University, University of Minnesota, Washington State University, University of Washington. They all have history departments and they all have slightly different styles, and some of them have been entered in. Zotero even allows you to put your own in. Yeah, it will. And again, the magic of it is that your citation is generated by a citation engine that's going through and checking all kinds of things at once. I've given you a little bit of information here about Zotero Bib and about adding entries. You can even do in Zotero Bib, if you're looking at something that is a page out at a research site, you can just cut and paste in the URL in that ZBib slot, and guess what it'll do? It extracts the bibliographic data, goes out, it'll look at newspaper and magazine articles, it looks at journal articles, and much more. So it's kind of a nifty trick, kind of a neat thing to be able to use. Hopefully, I don't know how many of you have used Zotero or something like it today. It's pretty common and has been for the last 20 years, I'd say. I'd like to say I discovered this, but I didn't. My daughter discovered it right away when she entered a doctoral program in about 2004, 2005, and alerted me to it. And it's grown exponentially, and it's become quite robust. So it's a fun site to explore, a fun site to be able to use. And it's a neat thing to put into your favorites, just to say, well, if I want to make a bibliographic entry of something, I know I have that thing called ZBib. And that might be how you classify it up in your favorites to be able to use. Down at the bottom here, I've given you some helpful materials. The Elizabeth Schoen Mills site again, which I gave you last week. The Zotero Bib, the ZBib, is different again from Zotero.org, but ZBib, at least the short version, if you're paper-based or you're just using stuff on the fly or whatever, it works for you, and it'll even create a bib that it'll keep it for you for 6 months, but it's right on your own computer. It won't come up for 6 months saying, are you done with this stuff? But it will eventually come up and say, are you going to discard this, or are you just going to copy paste elsewhere? So you can, Zotero is free. I would tell you that I could show you my book right now that I have for genealogy, but I think I've lent it to someone. It's called Zotero for Genealogy, Harnessing the Power of Your Research. And it's like $19. It's not a biggie. Again, I'm a book nerd, so of course I'm going to have the book. By just using these things, you don't have to have that at all. You can, Zotero is going to create those citations for you and really help you. It's going to give you access back to notes or whatever. And say that you're Jerry or Jan or someone, and you've done an article and your citations are done in Chicago style, and you're attempting to get an article into an anthropology magazine or something else, and they say, well, there's just one thing. We use APA with this base. Guess what this will do? Literally, you could go over there with your total citations and notes done in Chicago style and push the other button, and it converts it. Now, isn't that nifty?
Wow.
So it really helps. I know of one person only that uses it as a research log. I do not use it as a research log, but you can. I happen to like timelines better as a research log. And so I don't use Zotero that way. or a ZBib, but you can do some pretty neat things with it. So that's a little bit more about Elizabeth Shown Mills, and a little bit more about Zotero and how they might help you as genealogists. Let me know if you decide to use any of it or if it's helpful to you. Or let me know too if you zoned out and you went to sleep. I didn't hear anyone though. I mean, if you went to sleep, then you didn't snore or else you were muted. That's what I have for you this week. I have some choice